Lightning was supposed to make Bitcoin into the global payment system. The next Visa. The thing that finally turned Bitcoin from digital gold into actual money you'd spend on coffee. Years later, it has. Well, it's complicated. The technology works. Capacity is at all-time highs. Major companies are integrating it. And yet your local coffee shop still doesn't accept it. Let's figure out what's actually going on. A common misconception worth clearing up first. Lightning is not Bitcoin's version of smart contracts. Bitcoin has limited smart contract capabilities of its own, but Lightning isn't that. Lightning is specifically a payment protocol, built on top of Bitcoin's existing capabilities, designed to do one thing: make Bitcoin payments fast and cheap. Here's the problem Lightning was designed to solve. Bitcoin's main blockchain is slow on purpose. A transaction takes about 10 minutes to confirm. The network can process roughly 7 transactions per second globally. That's fine for a settlement layer, where you're moving large amounts of value infrequently. It is completely inadequate for buying a coffee. Visa handles tens of thousands of transactions per second. If everyone tried to use Bitcoin for everyday payments, the network would grind to a halt. This was identified as a problem early in Bitcoin's life. The white paper for Lightning was published in 2016. The mainnet launched in 2018. So Lightning has been operational for almost a decade. Here's how it works. Lightning is what's called a Layer 2 protocol. It runs on top of Bitcoin's main blockchain rather than replacing it. Two parties open a payment channel by locking some Bitcoin into a shared address on the main chain. That funding transaction is recorded on Bitcoin's blockchain. From that point forward, those two parties can exchange Bitcoin back and forth between themselves as many times as they want, instantly, without touching the main chain again. Only when they want to close the channel does another transaction get broadcast to settle the final balance. The clever part is that you don't need a direct channel with everyone you want to pay. If you have a channel with Alice, and Alice has a channel with Bob, you can pay Bob by routing your payment through Alice's node. The network finds a path between channels automatically. In theory, this means a relatively small number of well-connected nodes can enable payments between millions of users. Transaction speed on Lightning is typically under a second. Fees are typically a fraction of a cent. The improvements over base layer Bitcoin are enormous. So where does Lightning actually stand in 2026? The technical infrastructure is real. As of late 2025, total Lightning capacity reached an all-time high above 5,600 Bitcoin. That's about $450 million locked into payment channels. The network has roughly 15,000 active nodes and 48,000 active channels. The adoption story is more complicated. The capacity increase is driven mostly by institutions and exchanges, not by retail users. Major exchanges like Binance, Coinbase, and Kraken use Lightning internally for cheap and fast withdrawals and transfers between platforms. That's a real, valuable use case. But it isn't what Lightning's earliest proponents had in mind. The grassroots vision was a peer-to-peer payment network used by ordinary people for daily transactions. User-level adoption has lagged. The number of active nodes has actually declined from a peak of about 20,000 in early 2022. Most consumer wallets and merchant integrations are clustered around specific use cases. Cash App and Strike support Lightning natively. El Salvador, despite walking back Bitcoin's legal tender status, still uses Lightning for remittances. Online merchants in specific niches, including content monetization and online gaming, have meaningful Lightning adoption. But the coffee shop scenario, the everyday casual use case, hasn't materialized at scale. There are also legitimate concerns about concentration. According to one major analytics provider, the top 10 Lightning nodes control approximately 85% of public capacity. Bitcoin's whole pitch is decentralization. If Lightning's payment routing depends on a small number of well-funded operators, the practical decentralization is weaker than the theoretical decentralization. The biggest near-term catalyst for Lightning is Block, Jack Dorsey's company, which owns Square and Cash App. Block has been rolling out native Lightning support across its Square point-of-sale system throughout 2026. Merchants using Square hardware can accept Bitcoin payments via Lightning without buying new equipment. Whether this triggers broader merchant adoption is one of the most important open questions in Bitcoin's payment thesis. The other meaningful development is Taproot assets. Taproot was a major Bitcoin upgrade activated in 2021 that enabled more sophisticated functionality, including the ability to issue other assets on top of Bitcoin. Taproot Assets is the Lightning Labs project that lets those assets, like stablecoins, flow through Lightning channels. They released version 0.7 in late 2025. This could be significant. Stablecoins are crypto's most successful payment use case to date, dominated by Ethereum and other smart contract chains. Bringing them to Lightning gives Bitcoin's payment network a much larger addressable market than Bitcoin alone could provide. Tether led an $8 million investment round in a Lightning startup specifically to enable this. So where does this leave the original question? Lightning succeeded at being something. Fast Bitcoin payments work. Exchange settlement works. Remittances work. Stablecoin support is coming. The technology delivers what it promised technically. It is just not yet the something its earliest proponents described. The replacement for Visa narrative was always going to require both technical adequacy and broad behavioral change. The technical part is largely solved. The behavioral part has been much slower than the technology forecasts. People who tell you Lightning is finished are reading the slow adoption numbers without looking at the institutional pipeline and the upcoming block rollout. People who tell you Lightning will replace Visa in 5 years are reading the institutional pipeline without acknowledging that consumer payment habits change extremely slowly. The honest read is that Lightning is a working, growing piece of Bitcoin's infrastructure with a real future as some kind of payment network. Exactly what kind is still being figured out. That's the Lightning Network. We cover crypto on the days that actually matter, with explainers when it helps. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. We'll see you next time.